Some of the royals are in the Caribbean ahead of the Queen's Jubilee. Prince William expressing profound sorrow over slavery in a speech he gave as part of that tour in Jamaica. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge are in the midst of this tour. It's been touched by politics. Jamaica's Prime Minister saying his country does plan to sever its ties to the monarchy and become fully independent. While Prince William says slavery was abhorrent, he did not offer the apology demanded by some of the protesters.
I strongly agree with my father, the Prince of Wales, who said in Barbados last year that the appalling atrocity of slavery forever stains our history. I want to express my profound sorrow. Slavery was abhorrent, and it should never have happened. While the pain runs deep, Jamaica continues to forge its future with determination, courage, and fortitude.
All right, for more, let's bring in Richard Berthelsen, CTV's royal commentator. Hey, Richard, good to see you again.
You too, John.
Your thoughts on no apology from Prince William?
Well, this has been a very complex issue for the royal family to navigate because there's a number of things going on this tour. The prince is there in Jamaica at the invitation of the Jamaican government to do things that Jamaica has asked him to do because the Queen is Queen of Jamaica. So there's that issue. We have people in Jamaica who think that Jamaica should become a republic. And I think that it's fairly clear that in the next few years that may be the case. However, it will require a referendum. And then we have people who are calling also for the British government to make reparations to Jamaica for what occurred during the slave trade, as well as to issue an apology. The royal family is not in a position of being able to deal with all of those issues. And so we had a very forthright and direct statement from the prince last night, who went further even than the Prince of Wales went in Barbados by adding sentiments about his own personal sorrow and the abhorrent nature of slavery. And I think this is where the royal family is going to sit on this, because the question of an apology from the British state, which at the time was the colonial master many, many centuries ago, is a matter for the British government. And it will have to navigate that with many, many countries where the British Empire existed at the time. The royal family themselves are not really in a position to do that. And in this particular case, although it's splitting a bit of or dancing on the top of a pin, he really is there in his capacity as a member of the family of the Queen of Jamaica, not really representing the British government per se.
It's interesting, Richard. We spoke to someone in Jamaica recently on the show who said, you know, he was even offended they were there visiting, and that, you know, the Jamaican government had tidied up parts of the country, you know, in order to make it look better for where they were going to be going on tour. And I know you're familiar with that sort of sentiment. Some people insulted that, you know, these people are even in the country. Very sensitive when you're thinking about a trip like this, of course, when you talk about the British legacy.
Yes, I think it absolutely is a very, very sensitive matter. But the reality is the prince was invited by the government of Jamaica to be there. And so the government of Jamaica has to answer for those things. Just as when we have members of the royal family in our country, it's the government of Canada that has made that decision. So that's a matter for Jamaica to deal with. Now, this was a part of a Platinum Jubilee tour. The Queen has very, very strong feelings about her relationship with Jamaica. The members of the royal family were prepared to go. And, you know, today we saw, for example, the prince do a major event with armed forces from all over the Caribbean. So it's part of a whole thing. But, you know, I think there's no doubt that Jamaica is headed to a republic. The parties there have said in their policy for 25 years now that they thought Jamaica is going to be a republic or should be a republic. There needs to be a referendum, and there needs to be a constitution, and there needs to be something to replace it. And those are always the issues in many of these countries. And that will be the next step, I think, that we may see as Jamaica heads towards the 60th anniversary of its independence. The Prime Minister used the word independence a little loosely yesterday. Jamaica has been an independent country with its own diplomats, passports, and everything since 1962, much like Canada. What is the issue here is who's on the money and who's on the postage stamps and who is the head of state.
Always good to talk to you, Richard, get your perspective. Thank you.
Pleasure.